Okay, well, last week, through my mumble jumbles, trying to set up how these things happen throughout the scriptures and how we can, by looking deep into the scriptures, reading into them, and you can find these patterns and pictures of how the Creator has worked since the beginning. And it's not that he has a plan that he's made so that everyone will fail. His plan was for man to dwell with him, and that's his final thing, is to have his children, his people, dwell with him. Okay, so we know in the beginning that's what he had in the garden, and in the end that's what he wants in the end, that the children of Israel, his people, who he calls Israel, will dwell with him in the kingdom. Okay, and the kingdom will be here on earth. It will be in the land that he promised to Abraham. He didn't make mistakes. He didn't put people in charge that were going to mess things up. He had Moses. He put Moses in charge of bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt. And there's a couple of times that Moses took it upon him, and Aaron took it upon themselves to maybe do something. Instead of following the exact instructions, instead of speaking to the rock, they struck the rock. And so we know that these things were not planned, but it's not beyond the Creator to know what man's thinking is, okay? So he doesn't look at us as failures. He looks at us as us changing our lives to follow him. Now, the one thing that we can never do, and I don't think it'll ever happen until he does it for us, and that's to show us how to love him the way he loves his people. And you can see his love through all of his children, through his people, all the way through the scriptures. So just going back in review on going back to, we got through how these divisions and how many different divisions there were. We can go back clear to the beginning and see divisions when he divided the light from the darkness, right? He divides, but his division is always for correction. He divides to make correction. And so everything that he's done, all the divisions and the patterns of dividing that he's brought up to Joshua where they're dividing the land. Let me see if I got that real quick. Okay, in Joshua 18, and 18 when we talked, Joshua, we talked about him calling the tribes together. Now, Ephraim and Manasseh had already settled their areas. I don't know why, but Joshua was actually out of the tribe of Ephraim, and he settled his part. That was in the Shiloh area where the tabernacle was. That was the first place that they stopped in, or the last place they stopped in the land that set up the tabernacle. Tabernacle was set in Shiloh. That's where the center of the nation of Israel, we'll put it that way. All of the tribes, that would have been their focal point, was there. So he gets together and he's saying, after they've had Gad and Reuben and half the tribe of Manasseh, and they fought and beat the kings up over on the eastern part of Jordan, they settled their land. Now they came in to settle the land, and they had 7 tribes that hadn't settled their land or hadn't taken their control. So we see that Joshua appointed them to all go out and, I would call it, survey their land. Make a picture of the boundaries in their heads, where the boundaries were, and come back and bring it to him, and they would roll lots for it to make sure this was their land, okay? So Yehuda ended up with Simeon in the middle of them, and Benjamin as their northern border. And you had the tribes of, let's see. So in the northern tribe you had seven tribes, 7 divisions, with Ephraim, the other half tribe of Manasseh, Issachar, Zebulun, Dan, Asher, and Naphtali. And in the southern tribes, you had Yehuda, Simeon, and Benjamin. And of course, you had Gad and Reuben, and a half tribe of Manasseh that was settled on the outside of the land. Now, the land that was promised to Abraham, if you recall, it went from the Euphrates River to the Great Sea, to the west where the sun goes down, and from the Lebanon northern edge to the southern tip of Arabia, or the peninsula of the desert down there. It's quite a bit. That's what the land was. The Edomites were settling them in the land of Canaan, which was the land that's described in these lots. So all that was the land of Canaan, except for the 3 tribes that were outside on the east side of the Jordan. So anyway, that's set up. He sets these land up, and you can see the purpose that Benjamin was pretty much set there, and it says Joshua's direction was, Yehuda, you stay to the south, and Israel, you stay to the north. And sometimes it says Joseph or Joseph as that northern tribe, but that's a picture of Ephraim and Manasseh, okay? And Ephraim is the leader of Israel, and it's the leader of the whole house of Israel. And we know that when we go to Ezekiel 37, and he talks about the 2 sticks, and he says you take the stick and you write on the stick Yehuda and the children of Israel and all their companions, okay? Because you remember they're still Israel, because Simeon and Benjamin and them are still part of Israel. And in Ephraim, you write on a stick for Ephraim, for Ephraim and the house of Israel and his companions, and you take the stick of Jacob, or the stick of Yehuda, and put it in the hand of Ephraim, okay? However you want to put it together. David does a better picture of it. But anyway, is what's happening is, in the end, we'll all be one tribe, and it'll be under the house of Israel, and the house of Ephraim, or the house of Joseph, if you want to call it that, would be in charge of those people, okay? When that day comes. In reality, the one that's in charge is Yahuwah or Yeshua, because they're the ones sitting on the throne in the kingdom, okay? But in that kingdom, we'll have all the tribes, and it'll be in the land. The way I interpret it and the way I see it in the scriptures, and it's pretty much laid out that way, that the kingdom is the whole area that Joseph, or that Yahuwah promised to Abraham, the Euphrates to the Mediterranean Sea, Lebanon to the tip of Arabia. And it ends at the Nile, along the Nile, Red Sea or whatever that is. That's the land that it's going to be in. The tabernacle itself will be set up in Bethel, which is not in Jerusalem, because the New Jerusalem will be in Bethel, which is in the mountains south of Shiloh and north of Jerusalem, okay? I can't pinpoint it on the map because I don't have the map, and I don't think anybody really has an accurate map. We only have guesses. But anyway, it would be in those mountains, the mountains of Israel. So, just as a side point too, have you ever heard of the Syrian Jews in the news and in history? Well, if you ever think about it, and I made a comment about the northern tribes, people going up and keeping the covenants and commandments, and people looking at them and considering them Jews. Because you got to remember, when Constantine set up the laws against the Jews, there was a law against you. You had to pay a tax if you kept the Sabbath, and if you kept the commandments, and you also had the chance of being put to death, because it was a law against the Jews. So the thing was, if you were doing the Sabbath and keeping the feast days and trying to follow the teaching and instructions of the Creator, then you were a Jew, okay? And they set up the teaching and instructions that they wanted for the church, international church, Catholic church, however you want to do it, the divisions of the churches, which we have all over the world today, thousands of them, okay? This is part of the division when you realize it. We have been divided all over the world. But anyway, those people on the eastern side of the Jordan River were in Syria, or the area called Syria today. You can we kind of drove over there. It was in '99. I went to Jerusalem with Monty Judah, and we kind of drove out through this highway and hit where you start Syria, and you could see where on that side of the Jordan, where they had a big army encampment that was sitting vacated. It's huge. It goes for miles, and they have a United Nations guard shack there blocking the road off because they've never cleared the mines off of the roads. And this goes back to the 1969 Six-Day War. And
you're talking about the buried.
Huh?
You're talking about the buried ammunition.
It's
that's why this popped off.
the Six-Day War in 1969. There was what they had, the Six-Day War, wasn't it? In 1969, I think it was. And that's when the Jews beat them back pretty bad. But anyway, they wiped out that whole army base. It's not a Jewish army base. It's a Syrian army base that was just sitting there vacated. All the windows are shot out and everything, chain link fenced off, and the United Nations guards it to make sure nobody goes under because it's all. At that time, it still had landmines all over the place. So you could see where that division there. So those people living on that side were called Syrian Jews, but they weren't really of the tribe of Yehuda. They were Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh that was living over there. That's just something it's just a side point that I was kind of looking at through it. It's a possibility that that's what it was. But anyway, so we ended up with the division of the lands last week. I want you to turn to Judges, if you would. And although I'm not good at reading, this kind of sets up from here on out through Samuel, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 2 Kings, and of course if you go to Chronicles, it's a history of all those things happening, but of how he set things up and how the Creator looked at what he was doing, and you can see what he was doing, and you could see the future of the tribes and what was going on in that area all through the time of 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, and 2 Kings. And it came to be after the death of Yeshua that the children of Israel I'm in chapter 1 of Judges or rulers or Shofim, that the children of Israel asked Yahuwah, saying, who of us should go up first against the Canaanites to fight against them? And Yahuwah said, Yehuda goes up. See, I have given the land into his hand. And Yehuda said to Simeon, his brother, come up with me into my allotment, and let us fight against the Canaanites, and I myself shall go with you into them. As you read down, Yehuda cleaned out that southern part totally, okay? There was no other tribes in there. He pushed those people out, okay? And he did it, and he never went north of Benjamin after that to fight. He never went north to the northern side to fight, although he was the one that was put in charge of taking care of the fighting. But he took care of his area. Simeon's territory, their allotment was right in the middle of Yehuda. So when you go to Benjamin, Jerusalem's in Benjamin's territory, and they never finished. Benjamin, being a Israelite, the house of Joseph, although he's part of was given to Yehuda, never finished taking care of the Jebusites there. They let them stay in Jerusalem, and that became a thorn in their side, okay? So Yehuda was they took in that, they protected them, but they never did take out the Jebusites, the people that have the Temple Mount area, or what was today would be called downtown Jerusalem, or the Temple Mount, and all that was in there. But the point is that they were set up. When they went up to the north, when we read through Judges and you're reading in the north, none of the tribes in the north ever dispensed or dispersed or took care of the people that they had in their areas. They all ended up letting the people live and do as they wanted, okay? Now, we see Yehuda in Yeshua's time as the religious group of people that were keeping, they were supposedly keeping commandments, keeping the Sabbath, keeping those feast days, and they kept that all along. It's a setup for the king of David, right? Because that's where he's going to be, through the tribe of Yehuda. So when he's setting that up, those group of people are actually the closest thing that the Creator had to somebody taking care of business, according to his teaching and instructions, his appointed times, his feast days, the Sabbaths, and so forth. But when you get to the north, those people had given it in one generation after Joshua died. They were already starting to go with these people that were around them and picking up. That's why they picked up all of these oddball, the tree worshipers and idol worshipers and whatever. But none of those people ever settled their land. They let the people in there, which caused them to pick up the ideas of all of those little groups of people, whatever their names were, all had kings. Their leaders were called kings. So you see what they were looking at. Give you an idea that all of these religions that were up there, all of these different groups of people that were still living within the northern boundaries had kings. And so this is kind of the picture of how he left them. And this is how Yeshua did. He was really, when Yahuwah was speaking to him, he was really upset and disappointed with the way they had turned out. But all of that property, just a minute, I got everything upside down here. So this is supposed to be the conquest of Canaan, which is the land that he was given him. And the only ones that really filled it was the tribe of Yehuda and the tribe of Simeon, and that area called Yehuda, and the detachment of Benjamin, because Benjamin was given to him. And like I think David, and we decided to look at Benjamin as the buffer zone between the north and the south, because it says, you stay to the south, Ephraim, you stay to the north, or Israel, the house of Joseph, and those people that are with him, the 6 people that we mentioned. Anyway, when I pulled this up and was looking and doing research on it, this whole setup through there, when he said to Yehuda, you will be the leader, or you will be the one that fights, it was appointed to Yehuda directly from the Creator, because he said to Yehuda. So somebody in there, through dream, a vision, or whatever, got that message. On every one of these things that Yehuda did, after every tribe of people and every one of them that they took out, Yeshua's got his signature in there with the olive tub. After each one of those outings, it was put there by him. It was his design to do that. When you go to the north, it's not there. He didn't go in there and fight the battle for him. He didn't go in there and disperse them. Remember what he told Moses, that he was going to go in first, and he was going to clear the land, and then they messed up, so we're not going to do that. You're going to go in and fight it, but I'm going to be there to help you, as long as you do it my way. Anyway, so throughout that, when you go through the first chapter there, I think there's 29 times that you'll see the olive tov, that little insignia. And you notice in the scriptures, it's not, when you look at a translation, it has the Hebrew words in it. The only ones that are in parentheses is that it's H853, which is the olive top. That's the only one that's in parentheses, and that's his signature. In the beginning was the Word. You had to have an alphabet to have words. And so he had the alphabet in the beginning, his alphabet with the olive to the top. So when he put that on there, he's everything in between, okay? And that's kind of what you look at. It's his signature, his ownership, it's his doing, it's his plan, okay? So these are the things that he planned. And then in the northern tribes, when it talks about him being defeated, it always puts it out how when you didn't drive them out, and he's got his signature there. He was the one that made sure they didn't drive them out in the northern tribe. It says, neither did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Bethshem and her towns, nor Tanakh and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Dor, or their towns, nor the inhabitants of Iblim. These are all old names. They're probably different. This is older translation of King James. And instead of putting them out, they took them in and made them kind of like forced labor type of thing, until those people became integrated with them, and they became integrated with these different tribes of people, with the Canaanites and all these different tribes in there. So that was set up in the northern tribes. So it's a picture of what, when we go farther into the scriptures and we see that the northern tribes are put out because of their idolatry, you can see where they were set up to have the idolatry, because they never got rid of those people. Yehuda never had that idol. They had idol worshipers, but not like they did in the northern tribes. A lot of the idols they brought with them. I don't know how many. We see Jacob had to bury all their idols one time. Most of their idols, the big idols of the house, was usually gold or silver or something that was of value. But there's somehow these idols kept coming back in, these false religions coming in and all that. So that's what happened to the northern tribes and to Yehuda. But it was set up so that the Creator was setting up the plans of how the future of these people were going to work. Now, is that did he have a plan that didn't work, or did he put that plan into motion? So when you look at this, it's almost, you can see that he put this plan into motion, that Yehuda was going to be the tribe that had the lineage of Yeshua in it, okay? And we know that. We can read that in Matthew, and we can read it in Mark, and we can go back and get Yehuda when he separated himself back when they were, before they went into Egypt. When he separated himself and he goes and gets a Shemanite woman or something, and they have the family, and then it goes to Tamar, and they have the twins, and that starts the lineage of Yeshua, right? Everybody knows that. So this is kind of like adding to it to make sure that my plan works, that this is what's going to happen. So when you turn to chapter 2, there, in Judges, what did I do with it? I won't have it in my hand. In chapter 2, I'll read from this one here. It says, this is Judges, and it says, and the angel of Yahuwah came up to Gilgal to Bochum and said, I made you go up, and it has the olive top, out of Egypt. That means I'm the one that did it. And I have brought you unto the land which I have sworn to your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. Are you still, and you shall make no league with the inhabitants of this land. You shall throw down their altars, But you have not done that. You didn't obey my voice. Why have you done this? Wherefore I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, but they shall be thorns in your sides, and their Elohims shall be a snare unto you. And it came to pass when the angel of Yahuwah spoke these words unto all the children of Israel, that the people lifted up their voice and wept, and they called the name of that place Bocham, and they sacrificed to Yahuwah. So now we're going back a little bit, okay? So now we're going to go to the death of Yeshua, and this is in Judges chapter 2, verse 6. And when Yeshua had led the people to go into the children of Israel, went every man unto his inheritance to possess the land. And the people served Yahuwah all the days of Joshua, and all the days of the elders that outlived Joshua, who had seen all the great works of Yahuwah that he did for Israel. And Joshua and the son of Nun, the servants of Yahuwah, died, being 110 years old. And they buried him in the border of the inheritance in Temereth, in the mount of Ephraim, on the north side of the hill Gash. And also all of the generations that were gathered unto his fathers, and then there arose another generation after them, which knew not Yahuwah, nor yet the works which he had done. So it gives you a picture of what happened once that generation, and it happened all the way through generations, how things change in one generation. And we can see that. I think I've gone through three generations. I'm 4 generations under me. I got 3 generations under me now. So it's, so you can see how generations change. I seen how my mom and dad lived. You guys, you're younger, but I know some of you can think about when you were kids, because probably about the same time, how things were, how it changed today when you look at your children and their children, and it's like, wow, it's crazy. So he's showing you in one generation. And even, I think it was Ronald Reagan that said we're only one generation away from losing our status as a country, or the way we live. If we, you can see that in today's times, how we're getting closer. Anyway, these are things that when you look at this, you can see that he's given these warnings, and it's not just for those people today, it's for the warnings of all the people after that, every generation after that. So anyway, so as what he's got set up, because of these people, he set up judges. And if we go back a ways, when Moses was trying to take care of all the problems, and he was judging by himself, and his father-in-law came about, told him he needed to pick helpers. And Yahuwah told him that was a good idea, and he went into the Yahuwah put it on the hearts of 20 elders to be judges to help him, and then they had people to help them. So he appointed judges. So he's making the statement right there that he appoints him. The people don't appoint him. They might select him, but he's the one that appointed him. And so when we're looking at these appointments, now we can look at how these judges work, okay? He gives them a judge that's good, and they follow the teaching and instructions and the covenants, and they do all the words that Yahuwah tells them to do, and they'll do it for 20, 30, or 40 years. And that judge dies. And then somebody comes in and takes over. It's usually the Philistines, the Canaanites, or somebody. Most of the time it's the Philistines that keep coming. That's the thorn in their side. These judges were not priests. They came from different tribes. Samson was a Danite, right? And they had some Yehudites in there. They had some Ephraims in there. Some of these judges, they were different people. When he had a good judge, the next that's 40 years is a generation, okay? If you look at scripture, how many times 40 is in there? I think 40 is the picture of a generation. You can go with coming out of Egypt. They had 40 years in the wilderness, and they gave her 40 years for them to die, that first generation that was over 20 years old. So, and it's also the gestation period of the human, you know, from inception to birth is usually 40 weeks, okay? So this 40 is a pretty good deal. So you'll see most of the time there was a good judge, there was 40 years, okay? And then you might have 10, 12, 20, 25, 30, sometimes 3 years, and then you get another king or another judge. And this carried on in the kings. When they got the kings, it was the same way. They would have a king for a certain amount of time, and then they get a new king, and things would turn upside down and go bad. But he set it up that way. He says, I select the judges, and he also selected the kings. So when we go into Samuel, 1 Samuel chapter 8, if you guys want to look at that.
Samuel 1,
Huh?
8:1.
First Samuel chapter.
8, verse 1, right? Verse 2.
Oh.
I don't know what.
Oh, I'm sorry, in 2 Samuel.
Second Samuel?
Yeah, chapter 8, verse 1. And it came to be when Shemuel was old, that he made his sons ruler over Israel. And the name of his firstborn was Yael, and the name of the second was Abijah, rulers of Beersheba, or Beersheba. But his sons did not walk in the ways and turned aside after their own gain, and took bribes and twisted the right rulings. And the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, Look, you are old, your sons do not walk in your ways. Now appoint for us a sovereign to rule over us like the nations. This is what I was talking about. All of these nations of people, these groups of people that were still in the land that they never chased out, all had kings. Philistines had kings, the Canaanites had kings, they had kings. Okay? And so now a point, it says, but the word was evil in the eyes of Shema when they had said, Give us a sovereign to rule us. So Samuel prayed to Yahuwah, and Yahuwah said to Samuel, Listen to the voice of the people in all that they say to you. For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me as their king, from reigning over them according to the words which they have done, since Yom that I brought them up out of Mitzrayim, even unto this day forsaking me and serving other mighty ones. So they are doing to you too. And listen to them, listen to their voice, but shall certainly warn them, and shall make known to them the ruling of the sovereign who does reign over them. So this was the northern tribes, okay? And sometimes it wasn't the whole house of Israel. It was the northern tribes, because the northern tribes were the ones that were having the problem with these nations that were in there, or these other groups of people in there, that was causing the problems. And so they wanted a king. They don't want judges anymore. We want a king to rule over us, or we'll have some power, okay? So the Creator says, okay, yeah, I'm going to give you kings. And then he told Samuel, you tell them what those kings are going to do. Now, you can go back and read in Moses and Deuteronomy, the Torah of Moses in the book of Deuteronomy, when he tells them when they go into the land, they're going to ask for kings. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, he's a pretty good prophet, because he's prophesying, and he says, you're going to ask for them. Mm-hmm. And he tells them exactly what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. And so Samuel does the same thing. And so we go on and we find out about how the king started. The first king came, who was Shaul. He was a Benjamite, northern tribe, considered northern tribe Benjamite. I guess he's on the northern side. So they thought they picked him, but they picked him because he was the most handsome and he was the tallest and the strongest. But who made that man that way and who brought him to their attention was the Creator. It was the one that the Creator created. But we also know that David later comes into the picture. My whole point is this. He made the decision who the kings were going to be. And this is where we find that he, the Creator himself, feels that he was rejected by his people. Although he knew that he was going to be rejected by his people. Okay? He can put his wisdom in the heart of a man, or into the mind of a man, or into the wisdom of a man, if he so wants to. But he can also turn him against him if he wants to. I think he has that power. It's not about the devil making us do something. It's not there. It's because he gave us free will and free thinking. So when we look at that, I want you to put it in today's time. And I want you to, let's start out with California. And look at the state of California. And look at the leader that we have, and the leaders that we've had for maybe a few years. It seems like it keeps getting worse as we go along. We're not going up a grade, and it's not a downhill, it's not a fast trip downhill to Wonderland. It's a downhill trip to no man's land, okay? So that's the way I'm looking. I'm just trying to exaggerate it. But when we can see the leaders of today, okay? The people of California voted for him, supposedly. And they're running it according to the way they run it. I haven't seen a lot that they've done in the state that really benefits me. I keep getting school bonds and all these things on my property taxes that we gotta pay for, and water bonds to pay for all the waters that we have, you know, that you gotta, but, you know, they're take care of themselves. And this is kind of a picture of the kings that they were having, because the kings used the people to make sure that everything that the king needed, they had, right? If they wanted somebody's vineyard, they took it. They wanted somebody's wife, they took them. Whatever they wanted, they took it. Well, let's look at our nation today. It's kind of divided right down the middle. Now, I'm not saying that we're good, or I'm on the good side or the bad side, because we have a different vision of what good and bad is. Okay, so how many would agree with me that we're in a time now that we might have a very good person, or a good enough person, or good enough people, or a group of people that are at least trying to do what if they keep saying what they said, if they keep doing what they said they're going to do, then we're going to look at it and we're going to say, hey, these are good people. You know, they're going to increase my Social Security. I don't mind that. If they lower prices than the gasoline, I don't mind that. If the food goes down, I really like that. I mean, everybody, so we can all see that. So we can say, no, these are good people, but we have this other side of people over there. They think they're good people. I think they really do. I think they're a little deranged, but I think they really believe that they're good. And so we have the bad guys over here, and we're the good guys over here. But we're only good in our eyes, right? Look at our lives, how, you know, and I think we're very blessed. Okay, I think I'm very blessed. And I think we're all blessed because we're able to do here. We can come here, come and go as we want. We can do the things that we want. But how does the Creator see us? So, you know, I know he's shaking his head, because when you just stop, and don't stop in the United States, look at the world. 8 point something billion people out there. How many of them do you think he's looking down on and say, good and faithful servant? You know, and I'm not trying to be judgmental, and I'm not trying to judge any of you guys. Might all be good and faithful servants, and you should be. But I'm just saying, most of us, we are still human beings. We still have these fleshly souls in us, and we still have these fleshly ideas. So, you know, like I tell Carol, you can't talk to the TV set. It doesn't listen to you. You can, so just turn it off if you want to yell at it. You know? So she sees those things on TV things, you know, that they're talking about, and it's all bad and how terrible they are, and they're wicked and evil, and sometimes some of the things they do and say and think are, right, in our minds. But if our minds think it, what do you think the Creator thinks? So you see how that we progress this. You can take the scriptures and you can follow what he did in the books. Now, we've never had to, I never was in the military. I'm sure, were you ever in the military?
No.
I don't know if there's anybody in here in the military. Oh, sweetheart was. Well, she's a young one, so she could be in there. But we didn't, you know, we've never, I know, my dad was drafted during World War II. He had 4 kids, and he was 35 years old. He got drafted, you know, and he got drafted into the Navy. But they kept him in San Diego at the training center, so he was there for 3 or 4 years. But anyway, and he did it because he was an old. He said he says he was at least 15 years older than 90% of the guys that were in boot camp with him. So I can figure that one out, because they were 18, 19, 20-year-olds. But anyway, so they knew war. We didn't know it. I was in the service. I had 5 brothers that served in the military, okay? So me and my youngest brother didn't, but everybody else did. So we know what the military's like, but we didn't have to fight any battles. Let's see. Bobby was in Vietnam. He got shot up, so he was in a battle in Vietnam. So he knew what a battle was about. But do we know what the battle was about? We don't. You know, our lives, daily lives, is a battle. But my point is this: looking at the scriptures, we can see how we are today, but how do we compare to what the scriptures want us to be? I mean, even Yehuda was not perfect, the tribe of Yehuda, but at least they kept alive the teaching and instructions, the feast days, you know, the jubilees and the 7-year cycles, the 50-year cycle. They kept all of that going and kept it alive. They were the lawgivers, when it says that Yehuda was the lawgiver, when we look at go back to 49 in Genesis, it wasn't that he was given the laws, but it was given to him the laws to keep, to bring forward. Because if they'd left it to Joseph's tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, we'd all probably been Arabs. I don't know. But my point is this: we can look at the scriptures and we can put ourselves in it today and look at it today. We should judge ourselves today by looking back at these people. Now, you can look back and see what he was very disappointed with his people. He was angry with his people for the things that they did. So where do we fit in? That's my point. So I started out showing you division. How divided is this world today? Huh?
Very.
So how many nations? Is there 70 nations? Or is there more than that?
Yeah, 42,000 religions.
Well, I think you're cutting it short there.
That's the latest numbers I've got.
Is it? Well, I'll go along with that. But I mean, I think there's 70 established nations out there. There might be a couple more. So none of them, not Israel. Israel is, if you've ever been to Israel, if you went on Ben Gurion Shopping Center on a Saturday night, it looks like downtown San Francisco in Hades Park. So what is that park they have? It is weird. It's wild. That was 20 years ago, okay? 25 years ago. So I don't know what it's like today, but Israel is not Israel. That, you know, when we would think of Israel, Israel is not the Israel they're talking about in here. I think the Israel was I think somewhere I read that Israel, the name Israel for the nation in 1947 was a last minute
Yeah.
thing. They decided to do Israel instead of Yehuda. Because technically, that's what it should have been as Yehuda, but they wanted Israel as the whole nation. So anyway, when I'm studying and I look at the scriptures, I look to see where we are today, how we got here, and you can see exactly how we got here. You can go when you go into the New Testament and you start reading Paul's letters, and Paul's talking to people that were on the outside. He's trying to bring them in, and it's the same thing there. It's a division of the people. It's a division of their thinking. There's nobody in this room that thinks like I do. And I'm sure that there's nobody in the room that thinks like you do, except you. Because we're individuals, and that's what he made us. We've got separate DNAs there. And we have different ideas and different thinkings and different understanding. I sit and talk to Carol, and sometimes I talk to her and I think, where the heck she come from? I've only known her since she was 4 years old, so I pretty much know where she came from. But sometimes what her thinking is off onto something else, and it doesn't mesh, you know, and it doesn't have to be religion, it doesn't have to be politics, it could just be anything you're talking about. Sometimes it just doesn't mesh. For you guys that have been married, you all know that. And those that haven't. But anyway, I hope my conclusion of this thing and my aspirations when I was reading this and doing this, and this is stuff I put together over the years, and I had to put it together. And I missed some stuff out of it because last night I messed up my computer, and I'm glad that I had copied what I had. So anyway, I gotta go home and figure out what I did with the computer last night. Anyway, I wanted to show you that the division, everything that happened in the scripture was the plan of the Creator. Okay? And in the beginning, He knew His plan. He knew you in the beginning. He said He did. Right? He said He put your name in the book of life, in the Lamb's book of life. Right? So He knew you from the very beginning. Everybody that's born's name is in that book. Unless they reject Him and turn away from Him and denounce Him, then they're blotted out of that book. I don't know if you can get back in, but they blotted out. But anyway, so He knew who we were, and He knew what was going to be here today and what's going to happen. And so when we look at today, we can look at a world in turmoil. And I'm kind of like thinking, the more I read of what's going on in the world today, it's like, you know, it might be soon. And then again, it might be for, like Brad told me one time. He says, well, John, you asked me a question once, 1,000 generations. And I says, yeah, I'm trying to remember. He said, I said, oh yeah. He says he would, that those went against him, he would curse him for 4 generations, but he would love those that loved him for 1,000 generations. So I says, is there going to be 1,000 generations of people on the earth? Is that possible? 40,000 years, if it was a 40-year, 40,000 years, I don't know. But anyway, that was how he used to get me confused and get me thinking upside down when I thought I knew everything. Anyway, I hope you learned something from it. If you did, that's my fault. It's not yours. So with that, it's time to...
Prepare our hearts to receive the blessing.
All right.